Welcome back. I'm Alfred Lembrant Weber, and today we have coming from, I really hesitate to call them the Badlands because as you can see from the screen, this is extreme beauty in South Dakota. Experiencer and conference extraordinaire organizer, Mia Feroleto. Welcome, Mia.
Hello, Alfred. Thank you so much for inviting me on your program. I've been a fan of your work for years.
Oh, well, thank you. Are you on the Lakota territories now, or near them?
I'm very close by in a little town called Wasta, but I'm on the edge of the Badlands. It's just an extraordinary place. I came out here for the first time last summer and spent a week in July, and I have several friends who are members of the Lakota tribe, and I've been back here organizing this conference, which originally was going to be in May, but is now July 22nd, July 18th through the 22nd. And as a result of moving the dates, our attendees, among other things, will now be able to attend a Sundance ceremony, which is a sacred rite of the Lakota people that happens every year in the summertime.
Now let me ask you, what is it that led you and gave you the inspiration to locate or embed a conference on consciousness and contact and ET contact within the Lakota territory and within the Lakota indigenous American, Native American ancient community?
Well, as you're very familiar, Native Americans all talk about the star people and the star beings who've come to Earth, and in fact, a great deal of their culture has to do with beings coming from the sky. The white buffalo calf woman just appeared, initially to two men and then to the tribe and gave over her sacred pipe as a gift to the tribe. So their mythology and their religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs, religion is really not the right word, all involve earth and sky and water, the sacred water principle as well. So last summer I participated in Art Santa Fe. I've been involved in the industrial hemp movement for the past 5 or 6 years, and curated an art exhibition for the art fair in Santa Fe in July, where the art was all made from industrial hemp. And since I was out here, I wanted to visit my friend Alex Whiteplume and Henry Red Cloud at Pine Ridge. And the last day of the art fair, I had an extraordinary experience in the afternoon that I was standing alone in the ladies' room, and I had a full spectrum visitation by a Lakota elder, long white hair, beautiful white buckskin outfit in full spectrum color embroidery, telling me that the path was clear, that my trip was protected, and that they were waiting for me to arrive. And the closer that I got to South Dakota, the more energetically I could feel the energy and the presence. And just as I reached the area that night, driving from Santa Fe, the most extraordinary electrical storm and rainstorm started, and the streets were flowing water, and the electricity was so, the lightning was so powerful. It was as if, on some very deep level, I was being not only purified for my visit there, but welcomed, receiving a dramatic welcome as well. So it was quite an experience.
Right. So almost an interdimensional guiding of this conference, and kind of creating and embedding of the conference in the culture.
Very much so, and I've had a few mystical experiences. I had a relationship with a red-tailed hawk that lived on my property in upstate New York a number of years ago, and he would land on the ground and stand maybe 10 feet away from me, and we would just commune for, say, 20 minutes at a time. And he had left me a red tail feather standing upright in the dirt next to the driver's side of my car 20 minutes after we'd had one of these visits, which I kept and gave to the son of a friend after his bar mitzvah. And in 2012, when the white buffalo calf was born in Connecticut, he was born at the Fay farm, and my mother's maiden name was Fay and was born in Connecticut. And I grew up in Connecticut. So my grandmother's second husband was a Native American, and I've always felt a connection, a kinship to this land and to the people, which was just confirmed for me last summer when I came out here. But the energy of and power that's actually in the land, and the people themselves, even though the Pine Ridge Reservation is the poorest community, along with Haiti, the two spots are the poorest places in our hemisphere, and face all kinds of problems with drugs and alcoholism, poverty. The average person on Pine Ridge lives on $3,500 a year. The people have such spirit and a sense of happiness and joy and irony and humor, but also this profound depth of spirit in their lives, which had impacted me so powerfully last summer, because it's alive and well within them. It's not something that's detached. It's something that they're breathing and working with and living each and every day, regardless of the hardships that they're facing in their lives.
Right.
And the hardships are profound.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I remember back in the summer, I think it was, of 1982, when we did a peace concert in San Francisco Civic Center Plaza. I met a Lakota leader there, a Russell Means. I think he's Lakota, right?
Yes, he's now deceased. He died a few years ago, but he was a major figure in terms of bringing back. He and Russell Banks were two of the leaders of the American AIM, the American Indian Movement. And in the early 70s, which I'm sure you recall, there was a second Wounded Knee situation, a takeover of a little church in the town of Wounded Knee, because at that time, and we're talking, 45 years ago now, it was illegal for the Lakota and other Native Americans to do the Sundance, to practice their traditions. They'd be arrested or put into mental institutions. And the elders actually came to Dennis Banks and Russell Means and asked them to do something because the tribal leaders had something called a goon squad, guardians of the Oglala Nation, that actually drove around enforcing government restrictions on the tribe. And in the 1970s, Pine Ridge was just a hotbed of political dissent. People like Marlon Brando went out there, to stand with the Lakota. And to this day, the Lakota Sioux are the tribe who defeated Custer and basically are the only people who defeated the U.S. Army. So there's an enormous history of standing in their power and trying to maintain their own sovereignty.
Now, did they prohibit the Sundance because of an element within the U.S. government that did not want the Lakota to make contact with deity?
Back in the days of Sitting Bull, the Indians were not allowed to, the Native Americans were not allowed to ghost dance because they believed that by doing the ghost dance, by participating in these ceremonies, they would bring back the buffalo, which was the foundation of their livelihoods. I mean, everything depended on the buffalo, their food, their housing, their clothing. Every piece of the buffalo that they killed, they gave thanks to the buffalo, but every piece of every part of the body was used in some way. And the ghost dance was prohibited by the U.S. Cavalry because they believed that if the Lakota were ghost dancing, that they would rise up again, as they had with Custer. And, we have to remember, Sitting Bull is really one of my favorite people. He was an artist. He made a painting every year that captured a major event in his life at the time. He was a medicine man. He was a warrior. He was one of the few people at that time, regardless of ethnicity, who allowed himself to have a woman confidant. A very interesting film for people to watch is a film with Jessica Chastain called Woman Walks Ahead, about a painter from Brooklyn after her husband dies, she's a portrait painter, and she goes out to the Standing Rock Reservation because she wants to paint a portrait of Chief Sitting Bull. Carolyn Weldon was her name. And in fact, they became very close friends, and she advised him not to ghost dance because she knew that his life would be in danger if he did. But by the time they met, the cavalry had already taken out all of the chiefs who had participated in the battle at Custer's battle at the Greasy Grass, and the killing of the cavalry, and the killing of the Lakota people at Wounded Knee, the Wounded Knee massacre.
And so where is the conference on July 18th to 22nd of the summit going to be held?
The conference is right on the Pine Ridge Reservation in Kyle. It's about 20 minutes away from the Wounded Knee Memorial, where all of the people who were killed you know, the Wounded Knee Massacre in the late 1800s are buried. It's a very sacred spot. The conference is at the All Nations Gathering Center in Kyle, where Dallas Chief Eagle and his wife Becky hold events and training sessions. Dallas is a sacred hoop dancer, and he travels all over the world dancing and sharing Lakota spirituality. And they're both doing very amazing work with the people of Pine Ridge, and particularly young people, to teach them the traditional ways, which are so important right now, because the Lakota children are losing their language, among other things, and the traditional ways that the elders are, you know, carrying with them as they leave, as they transition to you know, the next stage of our conscious evolution.
Right. So what is the focus of the conference, and who will be speaking there?
The focus is on consciousness and contact, and our speakers include Whitley Strieber, who will be talking about communicating with people who have transitioned. His communication with his wife Anne has continued after her death, and his new book is about that, and that will be his primary focus. Yvonne Smith is talking about the work that she's done with John Mack and Bud Hopkins, and the extensive list of contactees and abductees that she's working with at this moment in time. Our friend Ananda Bosman is talking about 432 hertz frequency and the work that he's doing with music and consciousness, and also making contact, which, as you know, Alfred, he has done extensively throughout Europe. Alan Steinfeld of New Realities will be talking about the DNA in hybridization, ET hybrids on Earth, and new research that he's done in that field. Cindy Ketches, who was married to Lakota medicine man Peter Ketches for many decades, will be talking about Lakota spirituality and medicine. Terry Lovelace, who recently spoke at Contact in the Desert, is the retired Assistant Attorney General of the state of Vermont, and he has written a book that was published about a year ago on his abduction experience. And what's becoming clear from the contactees that are coming from, or sorry, the attendees that are coming from all over the country and the globe, people are coming from Brazil and Europe and Alaska. People are coming from all walks of life. And one of the things that I would like to focus on is, as experiencers, how are we to use the knowledge and the energy that we're being given as we move forward at this critical moment in time. And Kevin Briggs, who you've interviewed, is also one of our speakers. He had attended the first conference I organized a year ago in Vermont, which featured Linda Moulton Howe as our main speaker. But in addition to our speakers, we have several things that we'll be doing, including attending a Sundance, a sacred Sundance ceremony. We will be going out for a CE5 contact group at night out into the Badlands National Park to make contact, to meditate and make contact. And I'm in conversation with the Dark Matter Underground Facility in the Black Hills about our group going over there to have a tour of the facility, and they are receptive to that. We're still in discussions, and if we can't work that out, they offered to send a scientist to the conference to make a presentation. Their goal, or they're engaged in identifying and locating dark matter, similar to CERN, but CERN is trying to create dark matter, but the scientists here are trying to locate it. So the goal is to combine a number of things, with consciousness and expanding consciousness really being the driving force behind all of this.
Right. And is this the first such conference to take place kind of in this genre, in this venue in Lakota territory?
Yes, as far as I know, certainly, you know, people have come to Pine Ridge for various spiritual reasons, and you know, had gatherings, but in terms of a conscious interplanetary gathering, I do believe this is the first that I know of, specifically like this. So
assuming it seems like a very profound multi-dimensional event that brings in many layers of the dimensional ecology of the omniverse. I mean, from the indigenous and ancient cultures of the Lakota, and that whole center there in you know, the most ancient part of and undisturbed part of North America, you know, at least United States part, and then reaching around to the extraterrestrial part and contact, and then even reaching into the spiritual dimensions of the afterlife. So it's a very multi-dimensional, reaching all the dimensions of the dimensional ecology. Do you see yourself this being sort of the first of a regular annual event, or?
Well, I think that I would like to pass the baton probably to someone else, but I you know, I really want to make the point that that the ETs are certainly an important part of all of this, but they're not the only part of all of this. And you know, the afterlife, the angelic kingdom, the mineral kingdom, the animal kingdom, and when people come to Pine Ridge, they'll see the horses and the buffalo that are there, the bison actually. They run free. You know, you can be driving down the road and 20 horses will go galloping in front of you in your car, because it's just a totally different way of being with your animals. And I've been an animal communicator since I was a small child, and it's an extraordinary thing to have that kind of freedom, and you know, have it right there. It just changes the way you know, consider the animals in your own lives. It's just very, very freeing. But my point is, we are interacting with all these different dimensions, you know, all the time, and having you know, lived my life the way that I have, where my spiritual path has always been my primary focus, because it for me, it hasn't worked any other way. I've remained single, even though I've had, you know, numerous romantic relationships and opportunities for marriage. I always knew that we were not aligned, you know, spiritually, and that, you know, my potential partner was not someone who was going to understand, you know, my way of looking at the world, so to speak. So I think there are a lot of us, you know, with the work of people like Dolores Cannon and so forth, you know, people are being able to identify themselves as a, you know, a particular type of person, whether you're, you know, you've come in as a first or second wave participant. When I was 24 years old, I had my birth chart done for the first time, and the reader told me that I was a mystic, which was a concept I had never considered before. But of course, he knew me. He knew so much about me. It was almost scary. And you know, I've had my chart done many times since, but we're all, you know, exploring at whatever rate we're, you know, we're committed to our own personal growth. But at a certain point, as you know, Alfred, once you get to that point, you can't go backwards. You know, you can only go forwards, and so many things in your life fall away at that moment, because you've got your eyes on the prize, and, you know, there's no other way to look.
Right, right. Will you have someone filming or videoing the events?
Alan Steinfeld is talking about filming the you know, the talks and so forth. Certainly, in terms of, you know, going out at night, we'll have someone filming. Interestingly enough, where we had the conference in Vermont last May, a number of the speakers and a number of the speakers from our upcoming conference contributed articles to a magazine that I published called New Observations. And, you know, if you'd like, I'm happy to share the PDF with your audience. The Whitley Strieber's communion painting is on the cover, and Whitley has an article in there, and Ananda and a number of other people, Rebecca Hardcastle-Wright. I did an interview with Philippe Petit and Fumika Wellington. I wanted to hear what Philippe had to say about consciousness, since he walked on a wire between the World Trade Center towers in the 1970s, and obviously that takes a very specific mental, you know, conscious ability. And Fumika Wellington is a concert level violinist with the Honolulu Symphony Orchestra, and she's played the violin since she was 2 and grew up next door to Joseph Campbell in Hawaii. So there's a very interesting conversation between the three of us in that issue of New Observations magazine. But sorry, I lost your question for a minute there. I was circling back to it.
No, I was the to me, the richness and the mosaic of the 4 days of the conference. I mean, the way that you describe there, set in the Lakota territory there, with the Sundance, with the support of the community, with these leading speakers going into different dimensions of the dimensional ecology of the Omniverse, it just struck me that being able to film that, but also perhaps even editing it into a documentary that would encompass all of that, including the way that the conference was inspired out of a multidimensional experience, would make a very compelling visual documentary and story that would help also provide more context, going back to the struggles of Wounded Knee, even going back to Sitting Bull and all of those actors. You know, because they're probably looking down on this, wouldn't you say, from their
Oh,
position?
absolutely, absolutely. The elder that appeared to me in my vision was as clear as day, and the light, the vibration, the frequency. Because from my perspective, it's all about frequency. Someone asked me recently, like, who are you? What group are you connected to? You know, have you communicated with the Greys or the Arcturians? And my attitude is, I don't want to label, you know, the same way I really don't want to label, you know, races in our 3D world, or, you know, anyone. I labels are just another way to divide, but I, you know, it's all about frequency, and there's no question that I was called to come to Pine Ridge and do this, and there's no question that all of the people who come are being called to come here and participate in this event. And I did pick up the thread that brought in new observations, and that is the fact, when the issue on consciousness and contact was completed in early February, I was sending out the PDFs to various people, and I got an email from the woman who owns the property where we had our conference in Vermont last year, and she had had a visitation as I was sending out these PDFs in South Dakota. She was outside at night in Vermont, had a visitation, filmed it, and sent it to me. And it was just like the ETs were saying, "We love the magazine, you know, we're really happy, good job." It was just full of light and joy. You know, this little short video, it powered up and, you know, sent out this message. And, you know, this is just a continuation of that in a far deeper way.
Right. Well, now, will you be sharing some of this at the conference? You know, some of the magic that, and some of the interdimensional interventions and manifestations. Will you be sharing that at the conference?
You mean me personally?
Yeah, you know, as
well,
as
the thing about the conference, and also in terms of Vermont, to have such a small group, we'll have our speakers and maybe 25 to 30 attendees. So it's a very small, intimate group. So everyone will be sharing their experiences with each other.
So that only 25 people will be able to go. So it's something that, because if you look at contact in the desert, there was, I read this article, someone said, 5,000 people went there. And I went, oh my God.
I'd heard that, yeah.
Yeah, I said, oh my God, that's an industry event. And I actually spoke at the first contact in the desert ever, and it was actually out in the desert. And we kind of trekked from, you know, place to place there. And I got photos from this year's, and it was inside a hotel or some kind of a conference center or something. And
Right.
and but so there are only 25 places here, so it looks like people better sign up pretty quickly, right? If they want to be there.
Well, people are signing up, and they are coming from all over the place, which
Yeah.
is
Now,
really exciting.
if people want to sign up, how can they do so?
They should send me an email at Mia, M-I-A, dot Feroleto, F as in Frank, E-R-O-L-E-T-O, at gmail.com.
Feroleto, Feroleto, at gmail.com.
Yes.
Okay, so people better get on it.
Well, it's going to be a unique experience.
Yeah, I mean, if only 25 people can go, this is like a private consciousness and contact experience. You know, it is like a private experience, almost.
It is, and it also, I believe, has to do with those of us coming together who are educated in this area, coming together and energetically opening up a portal of some kind, creating a new space in one of the most powerful and sacred places on the planet.
Could you talk more about that when you say opening up a portal? Could you go more deeply into that?
I really believe that from all the sorrow that exists on Pine Ridge, from the history and the suffering and the abuse, I mean, there's no other way to describe it, that there are embedded layers that have kept people down on Pine Ridge. And not only the people of Pine Ridge, but America and beyond. We are continuing, we've done, virtually nothing to make the situation right. And last summer, when I returned to Vermont after being in South Dakota, I was writing an email to a friend describing the things I had done. He had wanted to know what it was like being on the reservation. And right after that, sending that email, I did my morning meditation. And the light, I personally believe that I experienced the most profound energy and love of my life during that meditation, which went on for an hour and 20 minutes. And I cried, tears were rolling down my face the entire time. It was so profound. And when I looked in the mirror after the meditation, I looked like a 16-year-old girl again, and I'm 63. So the message was to go to Pine Ridge and to do something there. And again, I really believe the people who are meant to come and participate in this, are coming.
So it's almost reviving there, bringing life back after this dark spirit of warfare came down and brought death to the entire plains and took away the buffalo and took away the livelihood of the plains and of North America, and from there has descended upon the world and brought the gourd of ashes. Isn't that true?
Yes. That's
Yeah,
absolutely true, Alfred.
yeah.
And the cavalry killed 60 million buffalo, a million buffalo a year. There are historic photos you can see of just piles and piles of buffalo skulls. They'd, you know, decapitate them and leave the rotting carcasses out in the hot sun to rot.
So
So
that was a that was an animal genocide, I guess.
yes, and the thing is too, we have no idea as a world what it feels like to live one day without bloodshed. We have no idea what that would do to our consciousness individually and collectively, to not be killing other people, animals. I have an unpopular opinion about abortion, and I don't believe that I have the right to tell another woman what to do. A woman should be free to, make their own choices. But my God, it's almost 2020. Don't we know enough about birth control to practice birth control effectively? We have to respect life again, all life, not just life that's politically correct. And animals are just as much a part of that in terms of profound neglect and abuse of children and animals all around the world.
Yeah, I could. This suddenly brought back a memory in the June of 1982 at the second special session on disarmament in New York. I was up in the upper floors of the United Nations, and I ran into the Hopi elders there in the House of Micah, and they were looking for a meeting they were going to have there because they went there so that the gourd of ashes, the atomic weapons, wouldn't explode. That was in their prophecies. And so I helped them get to their meeting, and I thought, oh gee, I might have had a hand in the Hopi prophecies. And suddenly I got this body memory as we're talking here now of this very powerful body memory and sort of body feeling that this event, that where you're talking about a portal is really because it was that cavalry went on to take the gourd of ashes and spread it all around the world with 800 military bases. Isn't that the case?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. This is the American legacy right now, and as we watch Donald Trump in the White House and watch all the fear mongering, on one level he has my empathy, because the negative energy that's directed at him on a daily basis is profound, and the fact that he's strong enough to withstand it, but he's not presidential material. And our civil rights are being trampled, every day. Yesterday, I stopped at a bank to get quarters to do laundry, for the laundry room here, and I was asked at the bank for a photo ID to turn dollars into quarters.
Right.
And I looked at the teller. I have a debit card for Social Security that I happen to have on me, and I said, "Well, I have a photo ID in my car. Are you really going to make me go out and get it to exchange money?" And I looked at her and I said, "There's something, seriously wrong and unhealthy with our culture if this is happening."
Yeah, the AI serving the artificial intelligence that's running all of these systems.
Yes, exactly.
Well, this sounds like a very, so do you have sort of a schedule how the 4 days are going to go, or that you'd like to share, or roughly?
Well, our first night, people will talk about, we'll have dinner, and people will be able to talk about what brought them to the conference, a bit about their background, and then dependent on if we are able to go over to the dark matter underground facility in the Black Hills, then Friday will be our day where we go to the Black Hills, have our tour, go to Wounded Knee, see the memorial, and then in the afternoon come back and have several presentations. And then Saturday and Sunday will be 3 presentations a day with meals in between. And then Sunday afternoon, we're planning a community meal of a traditional Lakota feast, and inviting elders from the tribe to come and join us.
Right, right. This seems to me to be sort of an important meeting of cultures here. That is, exopolitical authors and researchers are meeting with important tribal leaders. I think that's an important event. Don't you think?
Absolutely. And the goal of New Observations magazine, and my personal goal, is to disseminate information. And I know that's an important part of your mission as well, Alfred. A number of years ago, I created something called Art Walk New York, which has been copied around the country. And the idea was that a small group of people would be in an artist's studio for about an hour or 2 at a time, and see several artists throughout the day as a fundraiser for Coalition for the Homeless, and followed afterwards by a benefit auction. And the event has been around since 1995 and raises approximately $1 million a year now for Coalition for the Homeless. It took off right away and has been very successful. We're planning, Simone Bosman is helping to create a new website with donated works of art to raise money for Pine Ridge, particularly after the flood this past March, the flooding from the multiple snowstorms that happened, and then the warm weather came, and many people were horribly impacted with their homes being underwater for several weeks at a time. So we're organizing an art sale, and the artist has just started to be donated. And in addition, I live in a little town called Wasta, and the building that I live in, I have a charming little efficiency apartment that's all brand new. And but the place that I live was the motel where the film Thunderheart was filmed. And that film talks about the 2 FBI agents being killed on Pine Ridge during the time that Russell Means and Dennis Banks and Russell Means were standing up for Lakota culture in the traditional ways. And the FBI moved in, and a wonderful book to read about that is Peter Matheson's book, In the Spirit of Crazy Horse, which took 10 years to be published because the FBI and the government refused to let it out. So I'm living in this place that is kind of honoring the Thunderheart. You know, the making of the movie, the building I live in is called the Thunderheart Building, and coincidentally, it's been one of my favorite films since it was made in 1992. And we're talking about using the empty buildings in WASTA to create an artist in residency program. And while the artists are here for a month or two at a time, they'll go to Pine Ridge and do creative projects with young people and artists there. Even Philippe Petit had said that he would come out to Pine Ridge to do a walk, a wire walk of some kind, depending on the location. So I do believe that art can transform, and art historically, at least in my opinion, still is one of the ways in which we can connect to higher realms of being and thought. So all of this is in the process, and these opportunities have presented themselves, you know, just over the past couple of months as I've been here working on preparing for this conference.
Oh, yeah. Well, we would I would certainly, if you would be willing, I would certainly be. We at Exopolitics TV would certainly be interested in covering kind of the a report on the aftermath of the conference and what it led to, and on Simone's efforts, and you know, all of this, and perhaps if as you say, the conference itself is sort of a collective healing or a portal, as you talked about, you know, maybe talking about some of the manifestations that
would be great.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I think that would be very good. So is there anything that you had wanted to bring up that you haven't had an opportunity to, or so far?
Well, I would actually like to encourage your amazing audience towards activism in their lives in whatever way that makes sense. We're in such a time that it's critical that we all push ourselves to engage and open our mouths to say what we truly think, not what we think we should say, in our daily lives and within our communities as well, because we can make a difference. And we've all been kind of lulled to sleep in many ways, and we cannot afford to stay in that place, you know, where we're like in The Wizard of Oz, you know, where the poppies are just making us all fall asleep. We have to wake up. We have to engage with each other and make the effort, because our days are numbered. Our days of freedom are numbered if we do not, you know, take back our sovereignty. And perhaps, you know, that is the greatest message here, because you know, America is in a very dangerous spot, in my opinion. And if we're using the history of the Lakota, you know, the truly brave, amazing warriors with leaders like Crazy Horse and Chief Red Cloud and Sitting Bull, if we use that as an example or as a warning of what could happen to us, which in fact is happening to us. You know, we are losing our rights the same way the Lakota Sioux lost their rights. The government took their rights and their land away from them. And they were devastated. You know, they were sent to reservations. Their hair was cut. They were beaten if they spoke their language, and they were sent to boarding schools, which, Alfred, I know you've covered extensively over the years. This is real, and you know, their rights were taken away. Our rights are being taken away as well, with things like the National Defense Authorization Act and all of the other things that have been put in place by the government. You know, I'm an animal activist. Being an animal activist today means that you're a domestic terrorist. These are all things that we have to really think about and acknowledge. We cannot afford to stay in this new agey place of just accepting everything, and you know, that's their decision and it doesn't impact us. And we've been conditioned to accept that everything is relative, and everything is not relative. You know, there are things that are right and wrong, and we have the opportunity on this planet, for every person on this planet, to have what they need to live a happy life. And instead, we're allowing the rich to take everything. I mean, the Lakota have an expression, the fat takers. You know, the fat takers take the juiciest pieces of the meat and the fat, which are the most tasty, and they hoard it all for themselves. And that's what's happening right now to all of us. Unless you have some massive, you know, economic cushion to keep this situation at bay, it's impacting, you know, everyone who will hear this talk is being impacted in some way. And please, you know, don't pretend that it's going to fix itself, because it's not. We all have to come together and work together to make a better life for ourselves and for everyone around us. So don't be afraid to write letters to the editor or your political, you know, representatives or emails. Writing a comment under a YouTube video is not activism. We need feet and bodies in the streets and on the grounds. Don't be afraid to speak out. We have to be willing to risk something, to stand up and be heard and counted. So I think, you know, perhaps that's the most important thing I have to say.
Well, thank you, Mia. That's very, very well said, and a sentiment that is, you know, and reality that will keep us alive and our community well. So thank you for saying that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Alfred, for giving me this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Now, again, for those 25 or so lucky people who can participate in this amazing gathering at the Lakota territories in July 18th to 22nd, 2019, and who can thereby also make contact with you and get in touch with you to whatever other amazing events you'll be creating in the future. How can they do that?
They can contact me by email. My email address is Mia, M-I-A, .Feroleto, F as in Frank, E-R-O-L-E-T-T FOLETO@gmail.com.
Well, Mia, thank you so much. This has been, for me, an extraordinary privilege. We have covered so many dimensions in this program, and I certainly want to thank you. And we look forward to your joining us again.
Oh, thank you so much, Alfred. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Certainly. Okay, then. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.